There's a particular kind of loneliness that has no name. Not the loneliness of being physically alone. Not the loneliness of being unloved or unwanted. Something stranger. Something heavier. The loneliness of standing in a room full of people. People who know you. People who love you. And feeling an unbridgeable distance between what you see and what they see. Between how deeply you feel the world and how lightly they seem to move through it. You watch the same conversation they are having, but you are also watching something underneath it. The fear driving the joke, the wound underneath the confidence, the desperate need for approval dressed as casual indifference. You see it. You cannot stop seeing it. And you say nothing, because you have tried before, and the trying only made the distance wider. This is not a gift. Not at first. It feels like a curse. Carl Jung called it the burden of consciousness. Jung spent his life mapping the interior of the human psyche, and one of the things he kept encountering in his patients, in himself, in the great thinkers who came before him, was this specific phenomenon. The person who has done genuine inner work, who has descended into their own darkness and returned with something real, develops a kind of perception that most people around them do not share. They begin to see what Jung called the unconscious in operation, in conversations, in relationships, in the way people construct their entire lives around avoiding one or two unbearable truths about themselves. And this seeing is isolating, because you cannot share it. You cannot walk up to someone and say, "I can see the wound that is running your entire life. I can see the thing you are running from. I can see what is underneath the performance you have never stopped giving." They will not hear it as insight. They will hear it as attack. So you carry it alone. Jung never pretended this was easy. He said consciousness is always paid for with suffering. That every step deeper into awareness is a step further from the comfortable blindness that most human connection depends on. The person who sees clearly often stands alone. Not because they are cold, but because clarity, real clarity, is something very few people are willing to stand near. Nietzsche understood this with a ferocity that Jung only approached. He wrote about what he called the higher type, the person who has moved beyond the comfortable consensus of the herd, who has stopped borrowing their values, their perceptions, their sense of reality from the crowd around them. And he was brutally honest about what this costs. He said the higher type does not suffer from loneliness the way ordinary loneliness works. They suffer from something he called the pathos of distance, the unbridgeable gap between what they perceive and what the people around them are capable of perceiving. It is not contempt. Nietzsche is always misread as contempt. It is grief. The grief of a person who can see a mountain that no one else can see, who tries to point at it and watches people look directly at it and see nothing. Not because they are stupid, but because they have not yet developed the organ of perception required to see what you see. You cannot give someone that organ. You cannot explain your way into their seeing. You can only stand at the distance the seeing creates and learn, slowly and painfully, to bear it with dignity rather than bitterness. Nietzsche himself never fully learned this. The bitterness crept in. The distance became contempt, and it destroyed him. This is the warning inside his life, not just his words. Seeing what others cannot is only freedom if you can carry it without resentment. The moment it curdles into superiority, into isolation chosen rather than accepted, you have lost the very thing the seeing was supposed to give you. Meister Eckhart, the 14th century Christian mystic who was put on trial for what he saw and what he dared to say about it, pointed at the deepest layer of this. He said that the soul which has touched the ground of God, which has descended beneath the noise of the personality, beneath desire and fear and identity, into what he called the spark of the soul. This soul returns to ordinary life permanently altered. Not elevated, altered. It sees the world the same way. It walks the same streets, has the same conversations, lives inside the same ordinary life. But it sees from a different place, from somewhere behind the eyes rather than in front of them. And this seeing is, Eckhart said, wordless. It cannot be fully transmitted. It can only be pointed at, hinted at, circled around in language that always falls slightly short. The loneliness of this is not a problem to be solved. It is the shape of the thing itself. Eckhart did not say, find the right people and the loneliness will end. He said, go deeper into the seeing until the loneliness itself becomes transparent, until you see that the one who is lonely is also a construction, also a story, also something that arises and passes in the awareness that was never lonely to begin with. This is the hardest teaching, and the most honest one. Here is what I believe. The loneliness of seeing what others cannot is real. It is not romantic. It is not a sign that you are special or chosen or ahead of everyone else. It is simply the natural consequence of going inward far enough to stop being managed by the surface of things, and it does not end, not completely. You do not eventually find your people and have the loneliness dissolve. Some of it stays. Some of it is supposed to stay, because the alternative, going back to sleep, pretending you cannot see what you see, performing the comfortable blindness of the people around you, is no longer available to you. You cannot unsee. You cannot unknow. You cannot go back through the door once it has opened. What you can do is stop treating the loneliness as evidence that something is wrong with you. It is not evidence of that. It is evidence that something has opened, something that most people spend their entire lives keeping carefully, exhaustingly shut. The distance you feel is real, and it is also the exact shape of your freedom. Carry it, not with bitterness, not with pride. Just carry it quietly, the way anyone carries something that is both a burden and the most honest thing they own. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment with your take.